going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's our weekly live stream where we talk about the news, current events, esoteric ideas, as well as our movie review. Tonight is the kickoff to our new theme for the month of August, and that is Vigilante Month. So all the movies that we'll be reviewing this month will have to do with vigilantes or vigilantism. With me, as ever, to co-pilot this thing with me is the homeboy Rob.
What's going on, everybody? Good to see everyone.
Indeed. So Rob, how did you decide the theme for this month?
So initially, I was kind of wanting to do a Death Wish versus Dirty Harry month, and both of them have 5 films in the franchise, and I was thinking like, oh, that might be kind of interesting to see like how each film fared against one another. But then I was like, well, that might be a bit much to do. I mean, the whole month doing two films every week. So I was like, we kind of shot some ideas around and said, well, why don't we do a vigilante month? And so obviously Death Wish is on that list. And we were initially actually going to have Dirty Harry, but that's more it's more of a cop film. Although you have kind of like a rogue cop in a sense in Dirty Harry Callahan.
Right. Yeah. I brought up the point that it can't really There's I guess there's an element of vigilantism in it, but the fact that Harry was it Callahan or Calhoun?
Yeah, Harry Callahan.
The character of Harry Callahan is still a cop, so he can still operate within under the color of authority.
Yeah.
And so
we decided to stick with go more of the Death Wish route, and it's like, well, why don't we do Vigilante?
With basically anyone operating outside of the system.
Yeah, and I think we got a good lineup for you this month. We got Death Wish, we got Taxi Driver, Gran Torino, and we have some obviously comic book characters tend to be vigilantes, especially in the DC universe. But we're gonna choose one that people aren't really thinking about is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're vigilantes, and I love how a lot of these revolve around New York, and then we're also doing The Dark Knight. So that's one of not just
Gotham being based on New York.
Yeah, but probably one of the greatest movies of all time, not just a great comic book movie. So yeah, I think we got a good lineup, and it's funny how much vigilantism and New York City, like how those two seem to get connected, because people get fucking tired.
Well, I guess the outlier is then Gran Torino, because that happens in Detroit, I believe.
But same idea. It's like you get a guy that's he's probably lived there his entire life and gets fucking tired of the bullshit gangs and degeneracy, and so he doesn't give it. But we needed to have a tough Clint Eastwood movie, so it's like Gran Torino seemed to be
right. Yeah, so you snuck it in, but
we don't get Harry Callahan, but we get another great character of Clint Eastwood that I really like. So that's the origin of our theme for this month. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And kicking it off with one of my personal favorites in Death Wish.
Something to look forward to for everybody this coming month. I guess before we get started, how are you doing, Rob?
I am doing pretty well, sir. I've actually had a pretty damn good week. I went to go see Oppenheimer last week, which, let me tell you, that obviously there's the whole oh, should we see Barbie or Oppenheimer, and like, oh, Barbie's so great. It's like, listen, 20 years from now, no one's gonna give a fucking shit about the Barbie movie, okay? Oppenheimer is the one that's gonna stand the test of time. This will be considered a classic 10, 20, 30 years from now. It's so freaking good. Now it is. I don't know if I would consider it a war film. It's a biopic about J. Robert Oppenheimer. But I would say it's a war film as Lincoln was a war film. We did that during our war films month that we did. But it's kind of, we get more of the political background into the development of the atomic bomb, and the internal struggle that Oppenheimer had with. He wanted to create it, yet at the same time was worried about what would become of is this going to be the thing that helps to stop wars, or is this going to be the thing that it's just going to keep getting worse and we're going to destroy ourselves? And there is kind of that, the way they struggle, the struggle that goes with it is really interesting. The cast is star-studded. You got Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt. Who else we got in here? There's Matt Damon's in there. Josh Hartnett is great in this film too. It's just down the line. Even if they're only in the movie for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I remember after you watching it, you immediately texted me saying you have to watch this movie, and then particularly shouting out Josh Hartnett now, and I was taken aback. Wow, that's a blast from the past. I know he recently did a movie. I don't think it had much theatrical release. I think it was one of those movies that had a limited theatrical run and then just went straight to streaming. But I was surprised to hear his name.
Yeah, no, he last time we talked about him was when we did Sin City, and it's we were kind of surprised when we both said, it's you know what I wanted? More Josh Hartnett.
I think his character was the most intriguing, and I wanted to know a little bit more about him.
Yeah, and the friend I was watching it with, I was commenting, it's he was supposed to be. He was the original actor that Christopher Nolan wanted to cast as Batman, but he turned it down.
Wait, as Bruce Wayne though?
Yeah, so he was. Yeah, Hartnett turned it down because he didn't feel comfortable. I'm not ready for that type of role. I'm not gonna do. I can't do it. And right. That's obviously how.
Well, he might also been trying to avoid the so-called superhero curse. Where actors who play superheroes.
From what I heard, that's not the reason.
Well, not the stated reason, but even in the back of his mind, he must have, that must have played a factor, because he was it's not as though he, at that point he was coming off major, roles and things like that. So I'm sure that, that was kind of a thorn in his mind.
Well, Christian Bale didn't have that problem, obviously.
Right, but he was kind of on the rise though. Him coming off of what is it, American Psycho, and The Machinist.
Yeah,
he was getting some
acting since he was a kid.
Yeah. He's a child. He was a child actor. He was in the movie Newsies. But as a kid, his profile was on the rise. So I think he also felt that he could probably take that risk.
Maybe, but I just but what I like to see is that Nolan obviously, Nolan obviously thinks that Josh Hartnett is a good actor, which is why like he got a fairly significant role in Oppenheimer. Man, he just knocked it out of the park. He was so good in this film. It was I was really blown away by his performance. So yeah, I was like the movie. I don't want to spoil it because it's just I want people to go to the theaters and watch it. It's really, really good. Actually, this year I've been to the theater more than I've been to the theater in since maybe 2019. Because maybe there's more like pretty good films that are coming out, with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. This film, I actually went to go see the Super Mario movie, which I really liked.
The what movie?
The Super Mario movie.
Oh yeah.
Which was actually really entertaining. The only one that I didn't get to see Scream 6 came out this year, which was really good. What else did I didn't get a chance to see John Wick 4, which I'm kind of disappointed about, so I'm gonna have to watch that at home. But yeah, I've been to the theater quite a bit this year, which has been great. But yeah, so I saw that this week. I also picked up some new films. There was a sale going on, so I got 3 new, well, technically 5 new films. But I got another Criterion Collection. I got one of my favorite westerns, Red River, with Montgomery Clift and John Wayne. Another one. It's not a good film. You've seen it, Andy. You didn't care for it too much, but I picked up one of my favorites, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And then I got a special edition of the Dark Knight trilogy, since we're going to be talking about it in a few weeks. So I got Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, and they got all the special features and there's the art of the Dark Knight trilogy, like how they created stuff, like some of the behind the scenes photos and whatnot, and a lot of other really great special features.
Cool.
Yeah, and I've just been having a good week, man. There's nothing too crazy. Just been doing some church stuff, and things are going well in married life, and I can't be happier, man.
Cool. Oh.
How about you? What's going on in Andy World?
Not a whole lot. This past Saturday was a rare, 5th Saturday for me, so nothing really, nothing scheduled for church stuff. So I just took the weekend. I got my car detailed. Which I try to do at least every 2 years. Get the wax, get the carpets shampoo and things like that.
Yeah.
Just for general maintenance stuff.
Yeah. Oh shoot! I should have invited. Yeah, we had my wife's friend was out. Your best friend.
Oh, Jen, yeah.
Yeah, we went out to Yard House. Played some games. Had a good time with her. But had I known it was a 5th Saturday, I would have invited you out. I didn't think about that.
Well, I mean, you still could have. I mean, whatever.
I should. I
know. It's like the same kind of problem that I tell a buddy of mine, because he's constantly busy, or he says that he's busy, And so it gets to the point where like we stop like inviting him to things because it's like because every single time that we try to invite him, he's like, oh, I'm busy or I can't, I'm working or this and that. And so just so just a word of advice for you people out there. If you're you can't complain that you don't have a social life if you're constantly refusing invitations.
That is true.
And I try my best to still try to reach out to him and let him know what's going on and and things like that. But it's just always like, oh, I can't, or I'm busy, or I have stuff to do, and it's just like, and the times that I do, that we do kind of get to hang out, it's like, man, I never get to go out and do stuff. It's like, because you never, because I mean, honestly, he's kind of a workaholic type, and it's like, he's always just kind of like prioritizing work and. And I mean, he kind of owns his own business, so I understand, the kind of necessity to do that. But then also, it's like, dude, we want to hang out with you, but you just constantly are turning us down. So it's like, at a certain point, you're gonna stop getting the invite.
Yeah, that is kind of what happens, and it's not that like I have an abundance of time, like. It's
right.
Like,
I mean, yeah, because like you're married now, and you have to prioritize your family, and so I get all that stuff, and I know and we try to hang out as much as as we can, but yeah, it's it's just it's just a good rule of thumb for people. It's just like if you're constantly saying no, then you can't be upset that no one invites you to things.
Yeah. Well, that's why, honestly, like, because I know, like, both you and I are pretty busy. That's why, like, I'm actually thankful we do this, Andy, because otherwise, like, we might not have been as close of friends as we are. Because this, in a way, like, I wouldn't say forces is probably the wrong word, but like, it awards us an opportunity to, like, we get to meet with each other at least once a week to talk and stuff and hang out.
Yeah.
I mean, along with all our fans.
Yes.
Well.
Yes, all of them. And then what is it? I went and spent time with some family, particularly with my nieces. So that was nice. We went swimming. Yeah, I mean, my oldest niece, she's like 12 or 14, I forget which. Yeah, and then my niece, the one that had cancer, she's like 10 now. And like, yeah, she's like becoming like this little person.
Yeah.
And then my other niece, she's like barely over 1 year old. Because my cousin, she had a COVID baby, so. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of COVID babies. Because because I know that they weren't necessarily planning to have another kid, but just. It kind of happened.
I called those whoopsie babies.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? My sister used to call me a whoopsie baby because because me and my sister's age gaps. Because like me and my oldest sister, we're 9 years apart, and so.
Whoa, that's a pretty big gap.
Yeah, it's a pretty sizable one. So yeah. Yeah. So my sister said it in a less nice way. She said I was the accident.
Hey, accident's better than mistake.
Yeah. I guess silver linings and all that. I guess.
Expecting you, it just happened. Whereas like.
It's like we're unexpectedly expecting you. But yeah, it was a good weekend all around.
That's good to hear, buddy.
All right. Yeah, let's get into topics for tonight. I mean, again, this is kind of a Robert-driven. These are Robert-driven topics, so I'll leave it to you to decide where we start.
Why don't we tackle the gaming, the video game preservation crisis that's going on?
All right, very good. Take it away.
Yeah, so I came across a video and about like about the issues that are going on in the video game preservation market. Obviously, like the reason why I think it's kind of important is it's very similar to the problem that goes along with film preservation, right? Obviously, now we have much more dedicated efforts when it comes to film preservation, where we even have films that were thought to have been lost and have been restored, a la Metropolis, which we talked about quite a bit. And 90% of all the silent films that were ever made are just gone. And the other thing that's a problem is that even the great classics that were done on actual film, the Universal monster films, all the Alfred Hitchcock movies, you name it. Those are starting. The film reels are actually starting to fade, and so now they're going in and digitally restoring all these things. So there is and we even have in the Library of Congress where they have deemed certain films to be credible for film preservation, to be for them to be safely guarded and taken care of. So in that realm, things are going well for preservation. But when it comes to video games, where it's also another really great art form that I personally enjoy quite a bit, but there's a lot of games out there that are just that are vanishing because I think the one of the big problems is, one, the gaming studios either no longer exist, or you have, it's like, well, if we preserve and locked up these older games, well, then no one's going to want to buy new games. Well, that's ridiculous. That's not true at all. But then even some of the newer games that are, especially stuff that's there's no physical copy of, but it's just they only have a digital copy. Once certain hardware goes away, certain things go away, those games are no longer viable. They essentially cease to exist. And we're also seeing that with these online games too. Once those servers and the support behind it goes away, those games are just gone. And so it's kind of, I thought this video that we watched was kind of curious, was really interesting because you have, they were talking with a couple of people that work with this preservation. They're working towards video game preservation, and because it's an important art form that should be preserved. And they talked a lot about the challenges that they're facing with that. And I'm kind of curious of your thoughts, Andy. I know you're not a gamer, but what do you think about it?
Yeah. As Robert mentioned, I'm not much of what you would call a gamer. So I don't have a great deal of passion as I have for other things like movies or or fishing or anything like that. But but more on the technical side, being someone, being a photographer and coming up still coming up in the time, in that transition time of film to digital. I know what it's like to work with film, and I know what it's like to I know what I know the physicality of photography. I could appreciate the struggles of losing something. I guess in this case, video games. I remember I was like the last year in my art school. I remember I was the last year that we had a traditional color photography darkroom.
Okay, yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that.
So so my year was the last one to have because I'm sure those of you who are great film buffs or whatever, who watched movies in the past depicting photo dark rooms with the red light and things like that. That's specifically for black and white photography, because black and white photography, red light, doesn't affect light sensitive paper, the photo paper. But for color photography, all wavelengths of the light spectrum will affect color photo paper. So you have to work completely in the dark. So having being able to know whether being comfortable with your space, working in complete blackness, darkness, and just not even be able to see your hand in front of your face, and just constantly having that spatial awareness is something that future students are not going to know, and I think that they're going to be missing out on something. And similarly, I think people who love video games, and would want people to know about these video games. Like Robert said, it's also an issue of equipment, because a lot of the consoles, they no longer exist, or they're no longer compatible with modern devices, or screens like TVs, or monitors and things like that. So they're not they're not maintained. So anyone who has a mother knows the pain of finding out that that your mom threw away your game console, or your accessory device, power pad or whatever, because seemingly you weren't using it anymore. So
the other thing is that similar with the older hardware too, is things wear out, and they
because in a few more after my year, in a few more years, there's not even be anyone going back to my art school, color photography darkroom. There's not going to be people who know how to maintain the printer, or the enlarging machines where you stick the film in and you're able to project the film out onto the thing. If that breaks, or the gears wear out, there's no way to get spare parts, or anyone who will know how to fix it. It'll become a very specialized thing.
Yeah. The other thing is and sure, all the super popular games, your Super Mario Brothers, your Mega Man, stuff like that. That's always going to be there, because those games are popular still, even to this day. They're profitable for the game companies that own those properties. But there's a lot of stuff where they're good games, but because they are maybe not as well known or as popular, they are gonna go away. And the problem is there's a few things that that can help with that. There's collections that come out. So there's been recent, like, there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collection that came out. There's the Castlevania collection, the Mega Man collections, stuff like that. That's great. I like stuff like that, and it's kind of a way to reintroduce these games to a new generation. But that's like such a small, tiny sliver, and so then the other problem is, like, you have to emulate, which is there's emulation or there's piracy, and sometimes that's the only way to do it. But we shouldn't have to do that. It's similar to, like, we talked about with with movies. Like, there's some movies that are just kind of lost to time, like, and in some cases, like, we were talking about this with the Vengeance trilogy, with the Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Lady Vengeance. And it's like, damn, I'm trying to buy the physical, like, collection. I want to have the physical copy of that, so that I can own it and play it and, like, watch it, because they're great fucking movies. But now we have, like, there's that region lock, craziness. So I'm gonna have to find. I might have to find, like, a region 3 disc. But it's stuff like that where you want, like, I want to watch the stuff that's maybe a little bit lesser known, but it's harder to find. And it's the same thing with these games, like. So you're telling me that my only option, outside of buying if the original hardware is not available, or it's insanely expensive because you have people who own them, and, like, there's a very, very limited quantity, especially when it comes to, like, not just, like, NES games, but PlayStation 2. Like, I'm still trying to finish completing my a collection of this one series, but the final game in that series, they did not print very many copies, and, like, a used copy, sometimes with just the disc, is, like, it's $200. Like, it's insane. And that's kind of the idea, is, like, so there's no way to, like, preserve, like, the games that are a little bit more rare. They didn't print out as many copies, and there's just no way to preserve them. And I really hope that we get, like, where game companies realize that it's important to preserve what they've made. The idea, there was one point that one of the guys brought up that I thought was really important was, did libraries put the book industry out of business? No.
Well,
obviously
People
still go out and buy books.
I remember that argument where the pushback from the companies is that, if they made these games available and, for free, more or less, then, it would put them out of business, because no one would ever buy, like, new games or anything like that. But yeah, no, and then like the presenter made the point about, like, well, like, no one worried that the library, was going to shut down the newsstand or whatever, because you keep coming out with new stuff, we're still going to be interested, but hey, maybe you want to look back, and try this other game. I mean, similar to, like, are there new books being written today? Yeah, but, like, maybe we should check out, these other books, like, these classic books, your Huckleberry Finns, your works of Shakespeare and Hemingway and things like that. But yeah, but there's still the option of getting the new stuff.
Yeah, it's like I might not be able. I might be only able to afford, like, maybe a couple books a month or whatever. But it's like, I'm an avid reader, so I'm gonna maybe you make it a like a small subscription fee. Like, okay, well, maybe, like, it's for, like, $3 a month, you're able to, like, access all these games that, like, we preserve. Like, or you have, like, a similar, like, there's got to be some sort of way to like do it, like where okay, fine, you're afraid that it's not going to be profitable to keep, but then it's like if like because then all the game companies like, oh well, we own this, so we're gonna get like the portion of that like money. Like where does it stop? I think there has to be a point like where like, okay guys, the game is 20 or 30 years old, you're making new stuff, this game isn't gonna like really harm you in any way that like people play it. But yeah, it's it's like maybe I can only afford to buy like a couple of new games like every couple of months. But I also like I want to play new stuff, but I also want to play some old stuff that I don't have access to because I can't afford that old hardware, or I don't have like a setup that awards me to play on that old hardware. So having a way that I can play it in like maybe a digital format in some way, I think that would be really great.
Right,
like,
and yeah,
like,
I think in the video they were also saying how a repository or a collection of some sort could benefit from actually having the physical equipment as well, because of some of the games being specifically designed to work in conjunction with that hardware, like a special mat, or there's like, what is it? One of the Nintendo, like during one of the iterations of the Wii console, there's like the kind of controller with the screen in it, so it was like almost like a dual screen.
Yeah, the Wii U.
Yeah, the Wii U. That's right. Yeah, so yeah, it could. Yeah, so it could be actually beneficial for a physical location where people could go and kind of check out video games and things like with the original equipment,
right,
or hardware.
Exactly.
Because it's just like with movies, because it's like no one thought that Blockbuster or whatever was going to put movie studios out of business. It was like they kind of worked hand in glove, like synonymously with one another.
If anything, like having like VHS tapes and like the rental market, that saved a lot of, like, there was movies that like they were gonna like be losing their ass money wise, but it's because of like the blockbusters out there. It actually helped them to like make their money back, if not make a profit.
Right, because even though you had like your regular theatrical release sort of stuff, you also had like straight to VHS market.
What film I'm thinking of that like is considered like an all-time classic, that had it not been for the VHS market, that would have lost its ass. The Princess Bride.
I love that movie.
And that's considered
that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, it is. I just watched it for the first time not that long ago,
and
it's phenomenal. But yeah, and everyone loves that film. But you know what?
I know, right? And it is infinitely quotable.
Yeah, it's so there. I think there is something there. Similarly to with the video game market, that we can do to help preserve the games. And yeah, maybe there's some of them like that, just like, because there's so many that have been made over the course of the 40 plus years of gaming, but it's like they are still worthy of being preserved, and like a way needs to be found that we can access these games, because I think it's a detriment of all the hard work that people put into it, and new generations who might be curious and wanna understand like how the old stuff was done. Just similar how we go back and we're watching movies from 100 years ago that had those not been preserved, we wouldn't have any access to that. You know, that we wouldn't be able to watch the Nosferatu. We wouldn't be able to watch the Phantom of the Operas or you know, stuff like that, like stuff that we should be watching. And so I really hope that we find some sort of solution. And I'm glad that there's people that are fighting and talking about the importance of this, of the video game preservation. I think it's great. Because, like I said, I know it's not something that you're super into, but I still think, but it's for me as a gamer. I don't think it matters whether you're a gamer or not. It is a art form that is worthy enough to be preserved.
I would agree. Yeah. You know, because we preserve paintings, we preserve all sorts of works of art, and I mean, as much as people don't want to give it the credit, you know, video games are a form of art, and I think worthy to be put in that category, and also worthy of preservation. Because if we're going to exclude mediums, then why not we just exclude all of them, just like kind of like the I know it sounds like it's a zero sum, but yeah, kind of having that kind of attitude. It's like, well, if video games is not considered art, then then the Mona Lisa can't be considered art.
Yeah, it's a new style of art, but I would say like it's just as worthy. I mean, hell, video games are much more worthy than that banana peel that's being stapled to a blank canvas. And it's like that to me, that's something. The Jackson Pollock paintings, which are I think are. I'm amazed that those paintings are worth millions of dollars.
Well, it's just because at the time they actually were pretty revolutionary. Because I mean, not to be making trying to defend modern art or anything, but at least there was a really interesting idea behind kind of like the the absurdity of modern art. Kind of like with Jackson Pollock, it was more about like the gestural nature of kind of like the ephemeral, like kind of like the motion of the hand. That's what it was trying to capture.
This is Art School Andy that's coming out right now.
I know, but again, I'm not necessarily trying to make a defense for all modern art, of course. But I will grant the premise that some of the works were pretty revolutionary. And similarly with video games, it was revolutionary in the medium in which this art was created. Pollock had his paints. Nintendo had ones and zeros.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting topic to discuss. Obviously, it's something that I care about. I was just kind of curious if what your thoughts were on it, to see if but I didn't realize how bad the problem is. Because obviously old games are retro games are kind of in the at least in the video game world are like kind of a huge zeitgeist. Like people love Super Mario Brothers, they love Final Fantasy, they love Dragon Warrior, stuff like that. And so those games are always going to kind of be around. But that's such a small sliver of the gaming industry in the past. Like, there was so much put out there. And I'm not saying that every game is like the best game ever. There's a lot of dog shit. that was put out. But at the same time, people worked hard on those games. There was a lot of other issues that happened, but those games deserve to be preserved as well. Maybe I want to play that dog shit game that I like suffered through as a kid, or that or like future generations. Maybe they want to see like what was it like to like play this. But if we don't have them preserved in a way to play them on especially because as technology advances, there may not be a way to play the old hardware as we know it. So it's kind of, I mean, hell, there's even like, it's gotten to the point now too, like where people who are really into playing older games, they're buying older video, television technology to play those games. They're buying like, if you're trying to buy an old CRT TV right now that's in good condition, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
They're fucking expensive now.
Those of you not born, only born within the last 10 years, yes, CRT is cathode ray tube.
Yeah.
But it's basically old technology.
Yeah, it's older technology, but like there's, for some reason, like I think because the games were designed to be played on that type of technology, so they, in a weird way, they actually work better. They look better on the on that technology as opposed to your 4K television.
Your LCDs, plasma screens, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but it's true. But yeah, I really hope that we find a solution in this, and I'm actually gonna look those guys up and see if there's like maybe some way that there's anything that I can do in order to like kind of help out. If there's some donations or whatever that I can make to that, because I think to be honest, I actually think that's a very important thing.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Like there's a museum for all sorts of like obscure and niche things. I mean, hell, like, even in the valley here, we had that what is it? Eric is always talking about it. That museum with all the different signage.
Oh, the Valley Relic Museum.
Yeah, the Relic Museum. We have that, and that's preserving old things. Things that that. Yeah, I mean, that's a form of art too. Like signage and like lettering and like seeing like the old like Taco Bell like signs or what else did they have? Well, basically it's signage. But like signs from like all these old businesses that may not even exist anymore, or like they were like mom and pop places, or or like you see like the humble beginnings of Taco Bell. Because I do think that they have like an original Taco Bell sign.
It's pretty interesting stuff over there.
Yeah, like when it was like when Taco Bell was still mostly a regional chain. So like again,
it's important.
It's important.
Preserving the and actually, it's funny. I did not choose these topics like to come together like this, but it always seems to happen this way. Preserving talking about the past, preserving the past because it's important, and that kind of leads us into our next topic too, of like trying to say like of how is it that the past. Why do you think it is that the past keeps on repeating? As far as like certain like types of I'm not saying that like the same people keep doing the same thing or whatever, but like certain events, like certain types of events seem to constantly keep happening, and there's connections like just because like something happens in 2023, there's also a lot of like we can make connections from the past too, of people who went through the same thing that we're going through, and I'm actually kind of curious as to what your thoughts on, like, why do you think that happens that way?
My latest theory is that time isn't linear; it's cyclical, and that what is it? That there are certain cycles that that humanity has gone through. I mean, just taking the example from the Bible, and just like the Israelites, constantly going through these cycles of growth and destruction, growth, destruction, growth, destruction, and always within a certain time span as well.
It's always like there'd be a time of destruction, and then with the new generation, it's like, well, we don't want to live that way anymore.
Right. Yeah. So they devote themselves.
Straighten up.
Yeah, they devote themselves and they live right again, but then they started becoming lax with their adherence to their traditions and things like that, and they started letting in these new things, and then the whole cycle begins over and over again. And I think that just everyone thinks that time is like linear, but I don't think so. I think it is. There's, I mean, not saying that it's a constant like circle, but it's like, no, it's not that. That it's not linear. It's cyclical to an extent.
I know this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but do you think this is like kind of like our version of like wandering the desert for 40 years? Like that humanity is like kind of like doomed to go through like these similar events over and over and over again until we like kind of figure out that, like, at least until the end of time, until like we cross over into that next plane, the promised land, if you will. Some people aren't going to make it, some people will. Is this, you kind of feel like that maybe it's kind of something like similar to that?
I think so. Yeah, I think, but I think the United States is different in that, it basically took all the best elements from like every kind of society, and so they distilled it. They distilled like the best parts of like every like society that's ever existed. Like republic format, like with the Romans, and limited democracy from the Greeks, and laws from laws from the Bible and things like that.
Yeah.
And math from like the Arabs. So I think because the United States took all the best parts of all those past societies, I think it might have been more prone to failure faster than those previous civilizations.
Well, we a number of months ago we did when we looked through the historic headlines from like the LA Times, and like how many of those like stories were like, we're dealing with that like again today. We're dealing with this again today. It's like, doesn't that look familiar?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily talking about like our country. I'm just talking about humanity as a whole, where I feel like we're constantly going through.
I mean, like the last 3 years. I mean, Germany went back to like almost a totalitarian state because of like vax mandates or whatever. Like they literally fenced off supermarkets to separate people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. Literally.
Yeah. This is like it's like I said. That not even 40 years removed from like the fucking Berlin Wall and shit. You have like it's crazy like how Germany's constantly like fucking things up. Like they're always a problem. They've always been a problem. But like it's just weird how we just get caught up in doing the same shit. Like and even like
well with the Germans, I think they're just too damn utilitarian for their own good.
The other problem too, like, because this also happens at a personal level too. How many times, like, have not like you and me included in this, like, where we constantly find ourselves doing the same dumb, stupid ass thing over and over again. It happens all the time, and it's almost like we can't help ourselves.
Example?
I mean, like let's say, like, it's like maybe you have like a personality flaw or whatever, and it causes issues like maybe like it hurts your relationships with other people or something like that. I mean, it could be any number of things where, honestly, like I'm a smartass sometimes, so sometimes my smartassness gets me in trouble, and it's like, okay, I can't do that again. Like I have to kind of cool it, and I'll do that for a while, and then another event happens, and I do the same damn thing over again. And it's like, it's like I could avoid all this trouble if I would just shut the fuck up, but I can't do it. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. Like, there's always people that tend to get in their own way all the time, and they repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Well, I have no idea what that's like because I'm perfect. No, but yes, of course, because of course, I've had to learn many lessons over and over again. And, I mean, some of my flaws is a little too trusting, but then also very stubborn. I tend to be. So yeah, those are things that I'm constantly having to augment about myself, because to save me a lot of heartache and headache down the line.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Stubbornness, like, I know exactly what that's like.
Yeah, but I think it's just pattern recognition. Once you start noticing the patterns, it's a lot easier to avoid the potholes, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
Because once you start seeing, it's like, government says to trust them. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, now they're shutting down parks. Oh, okay, now they're bulldozing or filling in a skate park bowl to keep people from using it. It's like, oh, okay, and it's like, now they're saying that you can't enter certain places without a certain piece of paper. It's like, oh, this is getting this is getting very scary. This is very this is sounding a lot like Germany in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And you're able to call it out faster. I mean, of course, there are some people who be like, "Oh, well, that's not the same as that," because we're Americans and those were Germans, and we're way smarter than them. We have more freedoms and we're more on the ball. And it's like, but then you see the people who just go along, with the blank stares, like the same as like cows like chewing cud.
Yeah,
And
so there's a lot of times where I wish I was a lot dumber than I am, because
I know life would be so much easier if I was dumber.
I think my life would be a lot more.
Yeah, you know how much more my life would be more pleasant if I was dumber.
It'd be great.
It'd be great. I wouldn't have to think about anything. I would just go along. I would go with the flow. I'd believe everything.
Everyone protects you. Like, it's like, oh, he's a dummy. It's oh well. I feel bad for him. Like, and everything works out for these people.
Yeah, but it's funny because among the dumb people, I would be considered smart. You know, it's like because there's always the dumb people who congregate together, and then their things like, oh, aren't we so smart? They're the fart sniffer people. They think that they're so smart. And so, yeah, if I was that dumb, I'd be considered one of the smart ones. And not actually smart like I am right now.
Listen, I might not like. I know enough about enough where I'm actually like, I am like pretty damn smart, but I feel like I know enough that like it breaks me where I'm able to see things in a very clear manner, and it's like, oh my god, it breaks me, it stresses me out sometimes, where it's like, if I was just dumb, it's like, oh, okay, whatever, not a problem. It's like, I just go along with the flow, I wouldn't care about anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, everything's gonna be just fine. Like,
yeah, I mean, in a way, I do live that way, but that's only because because of my faith, and I ultimately put my trust in God, and so it's like, I try not to worry about my circumstances, like because if God wanted to crush me, by having a giant tree fall on me, that would happen, and there's nothing I could do to stop it.
Oh, stuff like that, I'm not too worried about. Like,
right? No, but I'm just saying, yeah, it's like that's why, like those people who just kind of just blindly go through life and be like, oh yeah, I can totally trust this, or oh, I'm just going with everybody else, so I must be doing something right. I'm
not so neurotic where I'm like, oh shit, like this could happen, and then if I don't do this could happen. Like, I'm not like one of those people, like, where I'm scared of my own fucking shadow, but it's more of, I look at, it's like stuff that's in my control. It's just like I work very hard on the things that I know that I have control over. The stuff that I don't have control over, it's like, listen, I'm gonna kill myself worrying about that.
It's funny that you bring up the word neuroses, because I was actually on my run this morning. I was actually thinking about that in connection with the movie review tonight, Death Wish.
Okay.
But I was just thinking about vigilante. Like, I was just thinking about I'll have a lot of thoughts when I go running, but like so it was like a thought. It was a thought thread in my mind where I was like, kind of like following the thread of ideas. So vigilantism, like rage. But anyways, but you brought up neuroticism, which is for those of you who don't know, neuroticism is basically more susceptible to negative thoughts. That's just a quick and dirty definition of that. And I was thinking, and no offense, Rob, but neuroticism is more associated with women. So I was thinking about again, no offense, but it just is. But I was like, what was that? Or Woody Allen, but he's basically a woman. Yeah, so I was like thinking, like, and how neuroticism leads a lot of women to like their own self-destruction. So I was thinking, like, what is the male equivalent of that. Because I mean, I know men can suffer neuroses as well, but just I don't think at as high as rate of women. And I was thinking about it a lot, and then I think I came to a conclusion. I don't know. I still might have to workshop it, but I think what is it? I think despair is the male equivalent to neuroses.
Wow. Okay. Well, why would you say that? That's I'm kind of like I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just hearing the thought process there.
Well, because I mean, again, neuroses being the quick and dirty definition is susceptible to negative thoughts.
Okay.
And I don't think men and women experience neuroses the same way. And I think despair is the male form of neurosis.
That's okay. That's an interesting thought. I had not thought of it like that because, I kind of figured like, I mean, I know the definition of like, being like neurotic and like kind of being the idea of being susceptible to like negative thoughts, and I figured that was much more of a unisex kind of thing, but
right. Well, I mean, just like being susceptible to it, I'm not saying that men don't suffer, can't suffer from neuroses, but I'm just like women are more likely to be affected by neuroses. But I think like the strongest neuroses that men suffer from is despair, which which then leads back to like the higher rates of suicide for men.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I would say like my wife tends to be a little bit more of kind of like neurotic than I am.
Right, but it's not necessary. Like it's just like and again, another way of looking at neurosis is worrying for like just like worrying's sake.
Right, and that's kind of the way I see that.
Yeah, but like I think but I think like the neuroses that men. Like the most specific neuroses that men deal with, I think, is despair, and I think the one that they suffer from more is despair.
Well, that's an interesting. I'm gonna have to cogitate over that because that's an interesting thought. I haven't thought about that.
Right, because I think it's because of the burden of performance on men, to be providers, to be protectors, to be provisioners, to be leaders, and so that's for men not to be able to live up to that expectation, that burden of performance, that is where the despair comes in. That they can never become those things.
I can't say I've experienced despair just yet, but I have on gray in some areas.
Right, but yeah, I think that's a key factor of male neuroses, despair.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I just don't have shower thoughts. I have running thoughts.
Yeah. That's everyone kind of has like their own like zone, like where they just kind of like, I wonder, you kind of like workshop things in your own mind. And sometimes I have to like write those down, otherwise it's kind of like sand in your hands, where it's like I got it, and it's like it just sifts through your hands like. Fuck,
but this is such a powerful thought that I had. Like it's just like kind of like it's like ingrained in my head, and then like when you brought up neuroses. It just kind of triggered in my mind, just like, oh, remember this? You had this thought today. And so, I was like, it's a little bit of a little synchronicity.
But, I was just kind of curious of your thoughts on that as well, like, as far as, why is it that you think that, you know, as humanity, like, why do we keep doing the same dumb shit over and over and over again, albeit in a different package, but it's the same damn thing over and over.
Well,
and over
yeah, it's just, yeah, again, I think, time isn't linear, it's cyclical. And, we're always going to go through different ages, and, and human beings, they forget. They forget the bad times. It's that idea of, there's like that saying that it's been more popularized recently, but like, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create bad times, and then, cycling back through over and over again.
Do you think that has to do with like a, because that, to me, that doesn't necessarily, I don't know if that's something that is God intended, or if is it like a product of sin that causes that.
It's a very good question. I mean, well, because like the human heart, just, can't be removed from that equation. So, it could be just a byproduct of sin, but it could be a byproduct of sin, but not necessarily God ordained.
Where God has like allowed this to happen, because like, because of sin, this is kind of like a byproduct of it, and God allows it because He's able to use it to strengthen. I think it's a good way to maybe like sift out the like, He knows who's gonna believe, who's not gonna believe. And maybe this is like a way for humanity in a certain way to sift out like what is good, what is not good. This is, to me, this is like one of the mysteries of life, as to like, because I'm not like a professional historian. I'm more of an amateur historian, and I constantly am like, when we on this podcast, I'm always kind of connecting dots. Like, I'm thinking about like, this event that's happening right now, but it reminds me of like this thing that happened like, 80 years ago, or like 150 years ago. It's like this is the same thing that was going on, and for me, I'm like, man, it just seems so weird. Like it's almost like we're running on a treadmill that's just not going anywhere. And I just, I'm not really sure if like this is what God intended for us, and like even as like Christians, like it does, even in that, it still feels like we're running on a treadmill to a degree. Because even as Christians, we keep making those same mistakes. Oh, I fell into, I made this mistake again. I did this again. It's like I thought I was over this.
Well, I mean, but yeah, again, all you have to do is take a look at the example of the Israelites, or the Hebrews, as they were known at that time. During the Exodus, they left bondage, and not even a month into it, they were complaining about, oh, it's hot, it's like, oh, I'm hungry, even under slavery, I still got, 3 hots and a cot.
Yeah.
It's just like, you stiff-necked, people. It's like, how many times are you crying out to God, saying, deliver me, and then God delivers you, and it's like, what, slavery wasn't that bad.
Which is why that entire generation was, that's why they wandered for so long, because that generation needed to die away.
Yeah.
Because you needed a new generation to like realize like, oh, yeah, this is not good. We need something better.
All right. Although I always wondered about that because like the generation, like the Wicked generation, like they would have had to have kids, and they were the ones raising them. So, because do you think like they learned their lesson and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like we messed up, so we're gonna raise our kids right, so they could be the generation to enter in the land, the land of promise, or were they still like the same stiff-necked complainers, and that raised up their kids, and like they maybe they didn't raise them exactly wrong, but like they imparted something in their kids' hearts.
I think that the new generation before they entered into the promised land, let's be honest, that is a exhausting. Who would want to wander the desert for 40 years? Because I'm sure that they were hearing about like this promised land that God was going to deliver them to.
Right. I think like in their wanderings, they must have gotten at least like pretty close to the borders of like the land of Canaan and stuff. They're like, yeah, it's just like right there. Why can't we just go right there?
And you also had it was Joshua and one other person who was like, yeah, that it's right there for us to take. Yeah, this is what God wants. And I'm sure that like their voice, they constantly talked about it because obviously those people, those two survived, and Joshua ended up becoming the new leader of the Israelites, succeeding Moses.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually like kind of curious. Like I wonder if like this, like, well, you know what? Yeah, we've been wandering the desert like our entire lives. Like, let's try at least something different. It's like if we perish, we perish. Whatever. Like, but if God says it's gonna happen, then we'll go there and it'll be fine. And even in that instance, it wasn't like they didn't do it exactly the way that God wanted them to, and that's why like they never fully realized what they were supposed to do. Because when you look at like what God had promised them and how it was supposed to have gone, that is not actually what happened, because they lost their way. It's kind of like they almost fell back into like the old generation that was forced to wander the desert. They kind of went back into that mindset, and that's what caused a lot of issues later on. So I don't know. Humanity, like, we are not. Because we're at the pinnacle of humanity. Well, it's like no, we're not. Like we are dumb. We do the same dumb things over and over again. This is why God is necessary, because someone who obviously is like better than us and can see the entire pie and like the entire loaf of bread, however you want to look at it, and can see it. It's like what happened yesterday is the same as like what's going to happen thousands of years from now, because he can see the whole dang picture.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought I was just kind of curious of your thoughts on that, Andy.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think there's a. Well, the reason why also things like kind of like always turn back is like because we don't finish the job. Instead, because instead of because like especially like now with like this kind of like for some reason like this resurgence of like communist and socialist ideology, it's like even though we knew in the 20th century that it was like really bad, and yet we still allow it to flourish in academia. It's like, oh, like, because, you know, maybe in our hubris we thought, oh yeah, in academia we could you know, corral it more and keep it, you know, isolated and only like in academia for the sake of like, you know, teachings, like, oh, here's like communist ideology. But, you know, instead of like treating it like smallpox and like making sure that we just, you know, like destroy all of it, you know,
it burned every copy of like Karl Marx's book.
Yeah, we allowed it to incubate within university to then, you know, to infect, you know, young impressionable minds and be like, oh yeah, it's just because we didn't implement it right, you know, it's just because they didn't implement it right the last time. You know, the stupid fucking Russians or the stupid fucking Chinese or the stupid fucking North Koreans. It's like they just did it wrong. All right, we Americans, we're gonna get it right.
Yeah, oh, good lord.
And so, you know, like instead of like just snuffing out, you know, communist ideology and like, you know, wherever it sprang up, just immediately killing it with fire, you know, we what is it? We arrogantly thought that because of like our strong markets and, you know, our freedoms and, you know, what have you, like we'd be able to, you know, withstand. But it's like, yes, we would be able to withstand an attack from the outside, but not an attack from the inside.
No.
And so, yeah, I think that's also why it feels like history tends to repeat itself, because you know, we don't snuff things out. You know, we have to, you know, kind of, interesting enough, like in you know, Batman v Superman, you know, when Batman takes that really what is it, drastic stance of like, you know, saying like, oh, if we suspect Superman to be our enemy, even like 1%, we have to take it as an absolute certainty, you know. And so, but with these dangerous ideas like communism, socialism, you know, whatever, you know, we know that they're bad. We know that they're destructive. We know that all they do is lead to starvation and genocide, and we have to nip that shit in the bud. But we don't, because again, we think that, you know, because we thought that we were strong enough to repel an attack, and we didn't necessarily think that the attack would come from, the call. We didn't expect the call be coming from inside the house.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's all I had to say about that. I think that was, you know, it's one of those mysteries of life. I don't think this is not something that we're really gonna solve.
Right. Yeah. It's just a fun thing to talk about.
I don't have a correction for this. I'm just like, it's just more of like, it's like, why does this keep? Maybe, but the more that we think about it, like, of why this keeps happening, maybe we can like do better on maybe at least acknowledging that we make the same mistakes and we need to work harder to make sure that that doesn't happen, to learn from the past, so that we can have a better future.
But yeah, well, I think, you know, we have to get back to, like, I don't know if we can, but getting back to shaming, getting back to stigmatizing, because like, what is it like when those, you know, fat black lesbians of BLM came out and said like, yeah, we're trained Marxists, nobody batted an eye.
Okay.
You know, nobody batted an eye. We're like, oh yeah, we're trained Marxists. It's like we don't know what that means. It's like, we know what that means. You guys are subversives. You're that's basically what a Marxist is. It's a subversive. It's someone who's trained in subversion tactics to destabilize, to weaken, to compromise.
Yeah.
And then they admitted this, and like no one it's like no one had a look of horror on their face. They just like, oh, okay. You know, dead faced, no reactions.
Yeah, crazy.
And so, yeah, so bring back shame, bring back stigmatization. All right, let's make shame great again.
Hey, there's McCarthy wasn't completely wrong about everything.
Right. McCarthy didn't go far enough.
I highly recommend. Stephen Molyneux really did a really good breakdown of Senator McCarthy's life, and let's just say the guy was more right than he was wrong.
Yeah, and that's why I say McCarthy didn't go far enough.
Yeah, let's get into our movie review.
All right. Let me hit everyone with the synopsis and we'll get going. To remind you all, tonight's review is Death Wish, starring Charles Bronson. Who else? Charles Bronson. Jeff Goldblum makes an appearance as well.
This will be one of his first films.
Yeah, he's a really young guy in this. Hope Lang, Kathleen Tolan, Vincent Gardenia, Stephen Keats, who if you guys follow along, he was in what is it? The Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Yeah, that's right. He's right. That's right. He was he's Paul Kersey's son-in-law, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He's in this film too.
All right, let me hit everyone with the synopsis and we'll get going. And yeah, here's the synopsis for Death Wish. Once a mild-mannered, liberal New York City architect, Paul Kersey snaps when intruders break into his home, murdering his wife and violently raping his daughter. Business trip to Tucson, Arizona lands him a gift from a client, a revolver he uses to patrol the streets when he returns home. Frustrated that the police cannot find the intruders, he becomes a vigilante, gunning down any criminal that crosses his path. The public finds his vigilantism heroic. This movie came out July 24th of 1974. The box office pull of $22 million or $20.3 million, depending on who you're asking, I guess.
Yeah, I think the original budget was like $3 million, so it made a lot of money. This is a very popular film.
Yeah.
Was this this is not your first time watching Death Wish, is it, Andy?
Actually,
What's that?
Hold on. Sorry. Actually, it is the first time I'm watching.
Really?
Well,
this is your first time watching Death Wish.
Yes. Or at least watching it the whole way through. Because I do remember certain scenes, like the subway scene. I remember, and what is it? The final confrontation towards the end. I remember. So I don't think I watched the entirety of Death Wish, but I have seen the subsequent sequel.
Snippets of it.
Yeah, I've seen snippets, or I remember snippets. So I might have watched it, but I don't remember it fully. I do remember watching the subsequent sequel Death Wish movie, or some of them, but not the first one.
Yeah, well, so 2 is actually really a good follow-up to this. It's also really just like so depressing. But like once you get to like Death Wish 3, 4, and 5, which I do like. I like those films. They're just so fucking crazy and over the top. It kind of like falls away from like I think like the idea behind Death Wish.
Yeah, so it basically pulls a Fast and Furious.
Yeah, but the first 2 are very tragic films. Paul Kersey, our main character, played by Charles Bronson, he obviously is, well, especially in this film too. Like, they kind of talk like, Paul, you're such a liberal, you're so kind and like nice, and about things, and it's like this is where he suffered this great tragedy, like where we get like this nice warm like moment between like him and his wife. They're on vacation in Hawaii. They just got back, and his daughter obviously is married, but like she's spending time with like they all live like near each other, so they're a very close-knit family. And this group of gangsters / rapists,
street hoodlums,
raising hell around their neighborhood, which was happening all over New York. I mean, like there's a whole series of movies that like around like that talk about like this time of New York.
Mm-hmm.
This film, you have
well, I mean, in the 70s, like because
the Warriors, like
but
kind of
the depiction in the movies is not that far off from reality, particularly at this time.
Yeah, so you have all these films, and let's be honest, people were fucking tired of this shit. Like, people just wanted to live in like a community like where they're not
in relative peace and safety.
They like when the sun goes down, they're not like worried about like what's gonna happen to them. Like, well, I think 99% of Americans, or people in general, I think they just want to be able to not like. They want to walk out their doors and be able to just live their life in a safe manner, right? I mean, that's the normal desire of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, based off of bad government policy, bad policing, or just like the policing is they're handcuffed essentially. And so and we're in this same time frame right now. It's happening in our city. It's happening. It's New York City's going through this thing again. San Francisco. All these big cities have this same problem, and where the criminals are essentially running the city.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the 70s, it got to the point where people were fucking tired of this shit. And to have so there's the famous story of like that guy who attacked a bunch of like muggers on the subway, and like there was a whole trial and everything. Like, but he was a hero. He was considered a hero by the people.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the guy's name. But this is kind of like a similar idea, like of like Paul Kersey.
Oh yeah, he ran for mayor just a few years ago, like the same time around with. He started this thing where it's like he basically gave like a red beret to these street kids, and I gave them purpose, and like say, all right, I'm gonna you're part of this thing. You have to make sure that these little old ladies don't get mugged, and then. These kids, these former hoodlums would go and they start like protecting little old ladies in the subway, and crime went down.
Yeah, it's because the system failed you. So who else is gonna protect yourself but yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing this type of movie where you have a guy who suffered a great tragedy, and to be honest, like you're thinking like, oh, he's not mourning or anything. It's like, of course he is. Like he's going through a lot, but like, what else is he gonna do? But like, if I just sit at home, like what, I'm gonna be all depressed and stuff like that. So I'm gonna continue to be myself, and I think that he was wanting some sort of vengeance on the people who killed his wife and raped his daughter and turned her like catatonic. But
really quickly, the group that was formed was called the Guardian Angels, It was started by Curtis Sliwa.
Okay, I didn't even know about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like it was the same time, like in the '70s, and like there's like street crime was rampant, and instead of like him like cracking skulls, he went up to these kids who were aimless, and it's like, here's a uniform, like in the form of like this red band, red beret. It's like, here's this uniform. Now protect these little old ladies, and then doing that, like it severely dropped the rate of attacks in the city during that time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but in this movie, he does go up. He does crack some skulls.
And honestly, like, that was the mindset. That was the why this movie was so popular, is because people like knew the crime was like that. It was like people just getting like raped and mugged, and all sorts of crazy stuff was happening. And having like a guy who was just like had this horrible tragedy happen to him, and he could have easily just like, what, fuck this city, I'm out of here, I'm gonna move over to. He could have just stayed in like Arizona. I think he would have been fine, or like to like another, because that architecture company that Paul Kersey worked for, like they worked all over the country.
They had other offices.
But instead of doing that, it's like, no, I'm gonna not let these bastards steal my way of life. And so it's like, you have all these guys that keep coming, and unlike the remake of this is more of a revenge film, because Bruce Willis plays the character of Paul Kersey in that film. He's the guys that like killed his family, whereas in this, like, he actually never meets those guys again. Like we never see those.
Right, which I think is a nice touch. Because then he could have gone on like this, revenge kick, where he, kind of like goes and like, interrogates, every, street hoodlum that he, happens upon. But I like that little touch where like he never gets like personal retribution or resolution.
No, he doesn't actually, and so he just starts fucking these guys up. It's like, oh, you're gonna try to rob me? Blam! Like it's like shoots the guy in the gut.
Yeah.
Or like he starts like a Batman. He starts going out in the middle of the night, and he looks for these guys that are like trying to cause trouble. It's like, and he fucks them up, which is great. And I think that there is the zeitgeist at the time is, fuck those guys, fuck these guys. We don't want these people in our neighborhood. They're causing trouble, and if somebody shoots them in the gut and it kills them, good.
Yeah, so be it.
That's what people want. And in the movie too, like Paul Kersey's actions cause other people to start to fight back on their own too. It's like, no, we're not gonna allow these bastards to take over our community.
Yeah. Although, like, I did enjoy like, his first night out. Like after killing that guy, I did appreciate, when he got to his place and he was like kind of like shaking. I did really enjoy that. I thought that was a really good characterization.
Because that's real. That's
it's very real. Because it's not like we live in a society where we're constantly dealing with death and dead bodies, and so it's like, so someone to like actually go out and like kill somebody, that's a big thing. And I mean, not to say that the Wild West was like so lawless, because actually the Wild West was actually more civil than than even now, because everyone was armed. You didn't know who you didn't know who had a short fuse or not, so you minded your P's and Q's.
Yeah, and like you also have to remember too, is like they constantly talk about how Paul Kersey, he's a liberal. Like he doesn't believe in like owning a gun, being concealed carry, and all that stuff. Like he's a peaceful guy. He's a pacifist who ended up having to take the law into his own hands. So of course he's gonna have the adrenaline, the nerves that like he's like when he's trying like after like his first kill. I mean like he can't even like hardly pour his like drink afterwards because he's like he's in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I didn't know I was capable of that, and I think that's so. I think that's such a nice touch.
Yeah, that was.
It made the movie real.
Yeah, but I wish. Not to say that he had to be emotional, but I wish. I wish it was characterized that he was like still like kind of going through stuff.
I think he was like.
Right, but I wish there was like I wish there was a little bit more. Expression, not necessarily like outright, but like him like kind of being like spaced out, or like if he had like snapped a little, like maybe his.
Here's why like I.
Well, let me just finish my thought here. But like not like a violent snap, but like maybe his secretary like keeps reminding him about this thing, or like someone's calling him, and then like he just goes, all right, and that's it. I'm not saying that he has to like knock over something, but just like kind of like just kind of like have a little break, but not but not necessarily break his character, just, but just, having like that little bit of characterization where he's like going, like you can tell that he's like affected. I think it would have gone a little bit better. I mean, for me.
So here's the thing. I think we do kind of get that though with his son-in-law, because I think he does kind of snap at his son-in-law just like a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely get that in the second Death Wish, where he snaps a little bit.
Okay.
The idea of like because I still think that like although we only see it once in the film of like him kind of like having the handshake, I think that he's more, he knows he has to do what he's doing because the cops aren't going to be, they're not really doing their job, and like it's not necessarily the cops' fault either. It's the governing policy that's out
mm-hmm.
there that's causing this rampant issue. So like I said, I feel like the thing that you think that you want, I think it does happen to a degree in this film, because there is like a little bit of he does snap at his son-in-law, not like in like a dramatic way, but it's just like he's just like, okay, I got it, just like I can't really do anything about it, like just it's kind of like a
okay.
I forget the exact line, but he does have that moment.
Okay, moment. Well maybe I missed it, but yeah, but even just in his dailies, like again, like if he's like kind of like there, but then like his mind is somewhere else, and so like maybe he gets yelled at, like maybe on the street, or like in the elevator, like the door's open and like someone's behind him, and it's like hey buddy, you want to he's like coming or going, and then he'd be like, oh yeah, and just like kind of like but it's I wish there was a little more time where like we could see him being like affected by it.
Yeah, I get that. I think to me, I felt like I got that,
mm-hmm.
and definitely in number 2, in Death Wish 2, you definitely get that.
Mm-hmm.
But for this film, it's a little bit more subtle, which
right.
I think might not work for everybody. But yeah, this is a. I mean, it's not a feel-good film. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's satisfying. Like we don't get the payback on the people who perpetrated the crime against his family.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more of like you have a guy who normally would be just like he doesn't want to carry a gun. He knows how to handle a gun. He was in the war, so
he was raised with guns.
He just chooses not to because he wants to live a peaceful life.
Well, no, he grew up with guns, and like, yeah, his mom was like the more liberal one. His dad is the more like conservative, like, rugged individual type. But his dad accidentally, his dad accidentally shot himself, and so like, yeah, his mom won on that, and so that one experience did affect him. But then this other event happened, and it kind of brought him back the other side.
Yeah, and the society didn't allow him to live that peaceful life, so he is fighting back against like the society that took his wife away from him. And I think that there's a lot, especially at the time, it certainly I think there's a lot of people that related to Paul Kersey and wanted to do what he was doing, and that's why it was a popular film. And we are approaching a time nowadays where we're gonna start having those Paul Kersey type characters that pop up either in film or in real life.
Right. No, I think, because I mean, when the law becomes insufficient or does not serve its purpose, then people are going to start taking care, the law into their own hands, and that's when you have bodies in the street, and so if politicians were smart, which by all action it seems like they're not. Because again, the societal rot, I think, is by design, and so like us like saying like, oh well, if you guys don't start fulfilling your role, then people are gonna take matters in their own hands, and bodies in the street, and like they don't care, they really don't care. But then specifically us in Los Angeles, I don't think that'll necessarily be a problem either. Because since majority of people are majority of the people in LA have a victim mentality, and so that they would rather be victimized than be perceived as being evil.
Yeah, or is that? Well, I figure like I'd rather get like raped because I don't want to come off as racist.
I know, which is funny because then you're presuming that your attacker would be black.
Or whatever.
It's or someone, or you're basically being racist because the assumption is that your attacker is someone not white.
Stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, like nowadays, you think like a Paul Kersey type would arise, but nowadays, it's not the context of Death Wish, but they're only like 74, right? So this presumably the movie was made like 73.
50 years old.
Yeah. No, but from the context of when this movie came out, and it's roughly portraying the same year. That they're not that far removed from schools having shooting clubs. Guns were a lot more. Well, guns were a lot more part of society than they are today. So like the idea, people might be frustrated and angry, but like I don't think they'll get to the point where they'll go out and start being vigilantes. In my personal opinion.
God help us.
I know. But yeah, I think this movie on the whole is it was very. I mean, despite the gruesome depictions, I think it was quite enjoyable. I
think you had some interesting thoughts concerning Death Wish, like that point while you were watching it. Like, do you want to get into that a little bit?
Did I say? Oh, Oh,
yeah,
well,
you
because
had like.
oh no, because I was just thinking about the character of Paul Kersey and just because that's where the whole thing about the despair and neuroses came up in my mind because what is it? I mean, for me, I don't think he was portraying it enough, but Paul Kersey was the expression of, I think, male neuroses, and that's despair. In that, he's a he was a father, he was a husband, he was a provider, he was a protector, but he wasn't but he failed, in what is it? Oh, provider, protector, and leader. But he failed in two of the criteria that that men are expected to perform.
Right.
And so I think, and in that way, I think he was going through some despair, or at least like the most common male neuroses, which would be despair, because he failed in his I guess fundamental purpose as a man.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what that thought was.
But yeah, I think that this movie is really good. I love. This is a film I've grown up watching 100. So like Dirty Harry. Death Wish was a movie that I constantly watch. My grandfather loved Death Wish. He loved Dirty Harry. And through that, I became a fan of these films. And I feel like you're kind of right. We're at a point like where we should be at a Death Wish type of society right now, like where people are just. And I think there are people who are fed up with the crime. Mm-hmm. The crime, like homelessness.
Well, yeah, I mean, to that point, yeah, because especially during the summer of love, there was a huge spike in gun purchases, and particularly first-time gun owners. So I think people were starting to wake up to the realities of these liberal feel good policies, and so yeah, I think, and I think that they came to the realization like, oh, like that this isn't going to be necessarily fixed through voting.
Oh, this is also like I also think of another movie that like fits in this time frame too, like The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. Is another film like where like it's just dumb policies from the government. Like it shows how inept they are, and you have people who are stepping up to like try to like stop this heist from happening. But it's just yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's portrayed in this movie too, because what is it, like the police commissioner, during that press conference, talking about like the vigilante, and it's like, oh, it's like, so the crime rate's going down. It's like, oh, no, the vigilante has been having no effect, but people are feeling safer. It's like, oh, so he's having an effect. Like, no, and it's like, so they're hugging out of both sides of their mouth, saying like, it's like, oh, the vigilante is having no effect, but there is an effect. There being like less attacks.
Well, and it got to the point like where Paul Kersey's work was helping them it was stopping crime. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, we're not gonna arrest this man, but we can't allow him to continue on his works. His journey. So we're gonna stop him, but we're not gonna tell you that he's
right. Yeah, but in a way that allows us to save face.
Yeah, and it's like it's crazy to think about. It's like, because they know that, like, well, we're not doing anything, but this guy is doing something, so we're going to use him, but we're also going to stop him at the same point. But we're going to make people think that, like, we're doing something. That's political bullshit at its peak, and that's exactly what happens today.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want a real-world application of that scene, it's it's Biden coming in and taking credit for job creation when all that was is people going back to their jobs after the lockdowns.
See, like, look how many jobs I created. It's like, no, you didn't do a goddamn thing.
Yeah, you didn't create new jobs.
To go back to work.
Yeah, this is just people going back to work. You didn't create new jobs.
And to be honest, like, the president doesn't do that. That really should have no, like, application on the president. It's just I don't know. I hate politicians so much. Like, they are god awful about everything. They honestly, they are a barricade in the way. Most politicians need to just stand out of the way, make sure that you keep the budget intact, make a balanced budget, and then just stay the fuck out of everyone's way. And if there's somebody that tries to take advantage of people, then you can step in and do something. Outside of that, just fucking stay.
Well,
out of the way.
I think the idea of the professional politician is a bad idea. So I think it should get back to a system where it's like, this is like a duty, like
a job. It was never meant to be like something.
Right? No, that's what I'm saying. Like, we should get back to the place where this was essentially jury duty. When you got sent, to Washington or whatever to represent your community, it should be like doing jury duty.
Exactly. That's what it was always meant to be like.
So I think a big step. I mean, of course, they're never going to do it, but ideally, that's where you should start. Make jury duty. I mean, making public service like jury duty, like something that you have to do. They'll give you like a stipend for like a sandwich for lunch, but that's about it.
I'm not even saying that they should be paid for what they do, but I'm just saying
I am. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you'll be allowed a living stipend, and you have to and you basically have to live in a dorm with all the other representatives. No dual houses, one in DC, one in where your constituency is. Like, you live in basically a dorm. With all the other representatives, you're there to do a duty, so do it and hurry up and get back to your life.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
But yeah, again, that's not realistically what's going to happen. But anyways, any final thoughts on Death Wish?
I think this film is fucking fantastic. I like sometimes. I'm not necessarily we need to take the law into our own hands, but there are times that call for it. The 1970s New York was definitely one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Kersey was an unlikely guy that had this. He's a liberal guy who had this horrible tragedy thrust upon him, and he got tired of because nobody was doing anything. It's okay, well, if no one's going to do anything, I'm going to have to do something. And maybe that was his generation too, where it's okay, I've done all I can do, or the government has done all that they can do for me. Now I have to do something for myself and for the community. So he stands up and he fights back against crime that is being thrust upon him. And because of his actions, it causes other people to do the same thing, and it caused change happen. Um, so I'm actually, in a way, Paul Kersey became a symbol, and Death Wish in itself became a symbol where I think people people in this time frame were tired of crime, and this is a popular film. It's like, yeah, we need to have like more Paul Kerseys in our neighborhood, like to do something, and I think this film is very important. I think it's important today, 50 years later. And it was definitely important back in 1974. So this film to me is great. How would I rate it? I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna go 4 on this. I think it's the one thing that's a little odd is how Paul Kersey doesn't show any emotion at all. Like it's more.
Yeah,
like,
see that's one of my criticisms. That's one of my criticisms that like this horrible thing happened to him, and like he doesn't really show. He's like he's back to work, and he's going to social events, and like nothing happened, but like he doesn't emote.
That would be the one knock I have on the film is like there's no emotion at all, and I understand like he's from a different like time period, but because Charles Bronson grew up in like he was born in the 20s, but it's just like you're not going to show any emotion at all, like the love of your life and like your daughter, your little girl was raped by these people, and you're not going to do anything about it. Like you're not going to show any emotion. That seems a little weird. Cause I would say like his son-in-law showed way more emotion than anything.
Right. Yeah, and I mean again, and that's my criticism about him, like not having those moments where he's like feeling it, like being kind of like distracted and in his mind, and having to like been like hey buddy, get out of the way, or like him like kind of having all that emotion like at the top, and like kind of like snapping at. I mean, yeah, he snapped at his son-in-law or something, but like someone who like is not close to the thing, and like because like his son-in-law being like that emotional is understandable, but then like him just kind of like snapping at like everyday people, like his secretary, just like kind of just trying to like do her job or whatever, but just like just having like that that thing that he doesn't display like when he's like his normal self.
Right.
So that's I think that's what was lacking for me.
Yeah, that's like you said that, and for me that's why like I'm not. This isn't a perfect film in that sense. That's where like maybe it's a little unrealistic, but all the other stuff like it to me is great. You have a normal citizen fighting back against the corruption, like where the police and the government aren't doing anything. So, well, fuck those people. I'm gonna stand up for my neighborhood, for my community, and it's gonna inspire people. And it did. And you could see like where he took satisfaction out of people standing up for themselves for once because of the actions that he was taking.
Yeah, exactly. And even just like when he was like having his like work dinners or whatever, and like people discussing the vigilante, and and just like his like his hearing the everyday person's like appreciation for for what he's doing.
Yeah, I thought it was like I said, in that sense, like it's a 4-star film, not a 5-star film, but it's a great film, and I think everyone should watch it.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna come in just under you and say 3.5.
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, great. Good movie, not great movie. Would still recommend though.
Have you seen
yeah,
the
and like
remake?
and that's for all like the criticisms that I levied against this movie.
Have you seen the remake of Death Wish, the one with Bruce Willis?
No, I haven't.
It is good. That's more of a revenge film than a vigilante film.
Right.
But it's good. I actually do recommend it. It's not a bad. It's one of those remakes that's actually pretty damn good. It's definitely much more gruesome, more gory than the.
Right, because what is it? It's directed by Eli Roth, right?
Yep. Yeah. I was when I saw him, I was like, who directed? I was like, oh shit, really? Who's normally a horror director, so there's definitely a lot more gore in there. But it didn't quite catch the same flavor that the original Death Wish has, which is a vigilante film. A guy who's just had enough with the society around him,
with the system,
to his own hands. It's more like the remake is more about getting revenge on the people who hacked his family.
For sure.
But yeah, honestly, there's actually a lot of correlation between Bruce Willis and like Charles Bronson, like the everyday like action hero.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, especially after Die Hard. Well, I mean, he was a cop, but yeah, it's just like he put like a beat cop put in like extraordinary circumstances. Just your average mild-mannered architect being put in extraordinary circumstances. So yeah, there's some parallels.
There's some parallels there
for sure.
But Death Wish I think is a film that people should see. It's not perfect by any means, and like the whole series I think is it's a lot of fun. Well, number 2 is not fun. But the like 3, 4, and 5 on like the last 3 Death Wish films, those are more just like it's so over the top. It's fun. It's so
right. Yeah, it's they pull the Fast and Furious.
It's so crazy, but it's fun. But the first 2 films are super serious and like it's devastating. It's really, especially like number 2. Like there's a moment like in number 2 where I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? They went this direction. This is awful. And not in a bad way. It's just like it's more in the Wind River way, where it's like, wow, this character has suffered so much tragedy. It's crazy. But I like this film a lot. I love Charles Bronson. I like Death Wish. It's a film I think everyone should see.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's our review of Death Wish. Robert gives it a 4. I give it a 3.5. Still a movie to watch. Would recommend. So do yourself a favor. But it is graphic. But it is like 70s graphic, so they're leveled. It's still like very shocking and everything, but it's not like what's presented these days.
Exactly.
In terms of violence or or just that sort of thing. All right, with that brings us to the end of our stream tonight. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I know Rob always has a good time.
I always have a great time.
If you enjoyed this stream, please check out the library of other content that we have. Circular J's main podcast, episodes of Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, and Rob's gaming show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd at PodcastCOJ and Instagram at Circular J's Podcast. And with all that said, we thank you for joining us tonight. Come back next week and we'll do it all over again. Have a good night.